All right. So 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 you've done the midsem yesterday. So you probably finished three questions in that set. So now the remaining three you can write and submit as your problem set three, right, by October 7th. Right. So again, you can submit on Moodle. I have already set up the link, so you can submit by October 7th. Right. So the remaining three questions which you have not attempted for the midsem, correct? And for problem set three, you have the usual rules for collaboration, right? So each question you can discuss with one other person in the class, right? But only limited only to discussions and nothing. You should not write anything down during the discussions and so on. So all that rules apply, and the deadline for P set three is October 7th, I think. Right? Yeah. So any questions or clarifications related to the midsem and P set three? Okay. Okay, so then let's start the new module. So this is the third of our modules. So this is mostly related to what are called Markov chains. Markov chains and random walks, which is a large class of techniques and ways to analyze randomized algorithms. So we will see a variety of different algorithms and their analysis, how they can be modeled as, the basic idea can be thought of as a Markov chain, and how to analyze these Markov chains and through that get bounds on the algorithm. Right? So that's the next part of the course. Okay. So we'll start with a simple problem, right? The problem is it's a problem that you probably all have already seen before. It is what is known as satisfiability. It's, it is just not letting me write. Right. So the Boolean satisfiability problem is that you're given a Boolean formula phi. Okay. So we'll say that it is in the CNF form, right? The conjunctive normal form, which means that phi can be written as something like C1 and C2 and C3 and so on till CK, CM, right? And each CI is a class, right? And a class is of the form something like L1 or L2 or L3, right? Where Li is something is either a variable or it's a negation of a variable xi complement. So you're given such a Boolean formula phi, and you want to check if there is a truth assignment to the variables that satisfy phi. Right. So basically, what it means is, can you assign some values, truth values, 0 or 1 to these variables, such that when you evaluate it, it evaluates to true. Right. So for instance, here is very simple example. Here is say phi, which is equal to x1 or x2, and say x1 complement or x2 complement, and x1 or x3, and x1 complement or x3 complement. right? So what this formula is basically saying is that for this formula to be satisfied, every clause, right? This is one clause, right? Every clause has to be satisfied, right? And for a clause to be satisfied, you want at least one of the literals to turn to true. So what x1 or x2 is saying is that at least one of x1 or x2 must be set to true, and x1 complement or x2 complement says that both of them cannot be set to true, right? So what it these two constraint, these two clauses together say that x1 and x2 should be different. Similarly, the last two clauses tell you that x1 and x3 must be different, right? So if you have an assignment where x1 and x1 has one truth value, x2 and x3 has a different truth value, will satisfy this formula. So for instance, in particular, right, if you set x1 to 1, x2 to 0, and x3 to 0, right, that will satisfy this formula, right? So this is a satisfying assignment for this formula. And what you want is, given such a formula, check whether there is a satisfying assignment, right? And what's interesting, what makes this problem interesting is that this is a special case of a much general class of problems known as constraint satisfaction problems, right? It's a lot of problems can be stated as a constraint satisfaction problem, and satisfiability is a very special case of a constraint satisfaction problem, right? So that way it's a very central question that comes up in a lot of different places. So you want an algorithm for this, right? And another interesting reason why this problem is very well studied is that it is an example of what is called an NP complete problem. This is, which basically means that we have very strong evidence that there is no efficient algorithm for this problem. So given this question is, do you have a polynomial time algorithm? And what we can say is that it's highly unlikely that this problem will have a polynomial time algorithm, right? But since the problem is very interesting algorithmically and and arises very naturally in many practical situations, saying that it is unlikely to have a polynomial time algorithm is not a very good answer, right? So what we want to see is what is the best algorithm that we can get for this problem, right? And so we'll see a very simple algorithm. So we'll start with a very simple version of satisfiability. Okay, we'll start out with this problem that is known as 2SAT. Okay. So what 2SAT is that the formula, the given formula phi, right, which is written as C1 and C2 and Cm, right? We say this is in 2SAT form if each Ci is of the form L1, Li1, or Li2, right? There are only two literals per class. At most two literals per class, right? So you given such a formula, and then again you want to check given phi, check if phi is satisfiable. Okay. So it's a version. So in general, satisfiability, you can have an arbitrary CNF formula which can have clauses where each clause can have many different large number of literals. 2SAT is a very special case of CNF SAT where the clause will have not exactly, at most two literals. It can be exact, but say at most two literals. And the 2SAT problem is, you given such a formula, check whether the formula is satisfiable or not. Right? So for instance, this is a 2SAT formula. Right? Because every clause contains exactly two literals. So it's a 2SAT formula. Right? And what do you know about 2SAT? Have you seen this problem before in some other setting? Yeah, so it is known that 2SAT has an efficient algorithm. Yeah, there's a polynomial time algorithm, which it has an efficient algorithm. So I'll just state it here. right? Which is that 2SAT as a polytime algorithm, right? What it means is that the formula phi, right? If you have a formula phi, right, which has say n variables and m clauses, the running time is I don't know what to do with this actually. Is something like it's a polynomial in both n and m. That's what it means, right? So such an algorithm is known, and the algorithm uses the fact that what you do is basically you take the one way to do it is to take the formula, convert it into a graph, and then say that the satisfiability problem reduces to some sort of reachability problem on that graph, right? So you think of a class which is Li or Lj as saying you can write it. So Li or Lj can be thought of as negation Li implies Lj. So that is like a directed edge where the nodes are the literals. Right? And so you can create a graph and then you can check whether there are certain paths in the graph and use that to solve 2SAT. Okay? So there is a polytime algorithm known for this problem. Okay? So what we'll start out with is a simple randomized algorithm for this problem, right? Which somehow will sound very naive, right? But it will still work very well. Okay. Any questions so far? Is the setting clear? Satisfiability 2SAT is the problem clear? Okay. So let's start with a very naive algorithm. Okay. So this algorithm is due to Papadimitriou. So this is a naive 2SAT algorithm. Okay. And the algorithm is the following, right? So what you do is you let A be the assignment which is all zeros. Okay? You start with this assignment, okay, and then you check, okay, if phi of A is equal to 1. Okay, just a minute, let's rewrite it. So if phi of A is equal to 1, then you accept, right? Else, what you do is, so why is what happens if phi of A is not equal to 1? It means that there is some clause that is not being satisfied, right? So let uh, choose an arbitrary clause that is not satisfied, Ci that is not satisfied, right? And so Ci is not satisfied because both the literals are set to 0 by this assignment. Okay. So now what you do is choose a literal uniformly at random in Ci and flip the corresponding bit. Okay. And continue for some, we'll see what that should be, say some continue for k steps. Okay. Until you find a satisfying assignment. Continue for k steps. And if no satisfying assignment found, answer that phi is not satisfied. Right? Okay, so it's a very, very naive algorithm, right? You start with an assignment, say it is all zeros. It doesn't matter what you start out with actually. Let's say it's all zeros. You start out with this assignment. Okay. And then what you do is you check whether that satisfies this formula. If not, if it satisfies, then well and good, you are done. Otherwise, what you know is that there is an arbitrary clause Ci that is not being satisfied. Right? There must be some clause that is not being satisfied. Right? If all the clauses were satisfied by this assignment, then the formula is this assignment satisfies the formula, which means that there must be at least one clause that is not satisfied. Choose any one. It doesn't matter which you choose in any order. You can choose you can say choose the clause with the smallest index. Say, right? It doesn't matter which clause you choose, but you choose an arbitrary clause. Now the randomization comes in the next step. Right? What you do is there are two literals which are both set to false by A. Choose one of those literals uniformly at random and flip that corresponding bit. So you get a new assignment now. Okay? And you check whether this new assignment is whether it satisfies phi or not. Okay? If it satisfies phi, well and good, you are done. Otherwise, you keep continuing this. You do this for some k number of steps. And if you have not found any satisfying assignment till then, you say that phi is not satisfied. Right? So it's a very sort of a greedy algorithm, right? Where you start with an arbitrary assignment. There is no reason for your greedy choice, right? It's completely arbitrary, but just that you build in some randomness into the algorithm where you use randomness to choose the variable that you will flip, right? The bit that you will flip to make these assignment satisfying. So is this algorithm clear? It's a very is the steps of the algorithm clear? Any questions regarding this? Okay. So let's try to analyze this algorithm, right? Let's see. So for instance, what we want to say is, so one thing is clear, right? If phi is not satisfiable, then the algorithm returns the correct answer. Always. Right? Because if the formula is not satisfiable, it doesn't matter how you, will it answer correctly within k steps? It need not always, right? So what we have to fix what k is, so it's going to be a randomized algorithm, right? So it will not always answer correctly. That's what we want to analyze. How can it go wrong, right? By how much will it go wrong? What is the probability that it will go wrong? Right? That's what we want to analyze. Yeah. Right. But what we do know is that if the formula is not satisfiable, then it will never give a wrong answer. It will always give the correct answer. Right? If the formula is not satisfiable, then it doesn't matter which assignment you choose, how you flip the bits, you will never find a satisfying assignment. So you will always answer correctly, right? If you go for case steps. The only question that you want to answer is what happens if the formula is satisfiable? Right? If the formula is satisfiable, how likely are you to find a satisfying assignment within case steps? Right? So if phi is satisfiable, how likely are you to find a satisfying assignment finding a satisfying assignment in case steps? Right? This is what we want to analyze finally. It is possible that you will not find, right? So you can have choices of, you can make random choices which will just force you to just keep looping around, for instance, right? You can never be sure that way, right? So there are chances that you will not find a satisfying assignment, even though the formula is satisfiable. Our goal is to actually understand, to analyze this algorithm. Okay. Any questions so far? So Indranil, did I answer your question? Is it?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Any other questions? Okay. So let's before we get into analyzing this, yeah. Someone was saying something. Oh, I don't know. There is some noise. Okay. So let's try to analyze this. So before we analyze this algorithm let's look at a slightly different question. So this is related to the following problem. Right? Say you have a graph. Yeah. So you have a graph with n vertices. I'll just draw the graph. There are n vertices. Okay. And you're going to do, so the graph's edges are going to be put like this. So this is the graph. So on, and then finally here you have an edge like this, but no edge going back. Okay, so this is the graph. I'll name the vertices. Let's call this V1, V2, V3. Somehow I'm not able to write again. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So you have these graph, right? Okay. And think of a person who's walking on this graph, right? We're going to look at a walk on this graph. So the person walking on this graph has this property, right? Think of it as like a drunkard who's walking, right? So this is the place where he's starting off with, right? Say this is the pub or the bar from where he's coming out, right? And this is his home, right? So this is the place where the pub is, and this is say his home, right? He wants to walk from the pub to his home, which is n steps away, right? And since he's drunk, it is possible that he can't always take n steps and reaches home directly. Right? So he can maybe take one or two steps forward, a few steps back, and so on. Right? So the question is, how long does he take, or how long does he take to reach his home, right? And to understand, say this problem, we will model it in the following way, right? So at every step, there is some probability that he will take a forward step, and some probability that he will take a backward step. Okay? Say that in the case when he is in the pub, he always takes a forward step, right? Say that the person inside the pub basically throws him out, right? There's a bouncer outside the pub, and if he goes back to the pub, the bouncer always throws him out, right? So with probability 1, he will always go from V1 to V2. But then once he is somewhere in between, he is so drunk that he has an equal chance of going forward or back. So if he is in the vertex, say V2, right? So from V2, he has a probability half of going to V3, and he has a probability of half of going to V1 as well. It's not 1 by 3, it's 1 by 2. And this is true for every vertex in the graph, right? So even here, he has a probability of going back one half and going forward. And here also there is a probability half. Right? Once he is in Vn, then he has reached his home. At every other place, he has a equal probability of going forward and back. Okay? And we are interested in a couple of questions. They are related anyway, right? The first is, what is the expected number of steps what is the expected number of steps for the person to reach Vn? That is the first question. The second is, if the person takes k steps, right, say k is greater than n, what is the probability that he has reached Vn, right? Right, these two questions are going to be related. We'll answer this question, right? So you have this person walking, so it's like a drunkard trying to walk in a straight line. At every node, he has equal chance of going forward or back, right? Okay, so is this problem clear? Right, so we'll see how this is related to 2SAT, right, or how this is related to the algorithm that we've just written. But let's try to understand this question first. Okay. Any clarification so far? Okay. So let Tj. Okay, let me just write this. So let Tj be the expected number of steps to go from Vj to Vn. Okay. So Tj is the expected number of steps to go from Vj to Vn. Okay. What we'll do is we want to find this number. So this is trying to answer this question here, right? So what we know is that Tn is 0, right? Because you're already in Vn, you don't need to go to Vn again. right? So that is 0. What can you say about T1? What is T1?
1 plus T2.
Right? It's 1 plus T2, because from T1 you're definitely going to T2 to V2, and then you take T2 times. So this is 1 plus T2. And what about Ti for the other values of I?
1 plus half of Ti minus 1 plus Ti plus 1.
Yeah, right. So you take no, Ti would be just half of Ti minus 1. Yeah, plus 1. Yeah, the half of Ti minus 1 plus half of Ti plus 1 plus 1, right? You'll take one step, right? Either forward or backward. With probability half, you will go back, in which case the expected time is Ti minus 1. With probability half, you will go front, which is in which case the time is Ti plus 1. And 1 is for counting that one step that you've just taken. Right? So this is the expected number of steps to go from Vj to Vm. Right? So if you actually try to write down this recurrence and work out the details, what you will actually find is that Ti is equal to n squared minus I squared. Right? Ti is going to be n squared minus I squared. Right? In particular, right, what this means is that T1 is n square minus, okay, not I square, it will be I minus 1 squared. Okay? So in particular for T1, it's going to be n squared. Okay. So what it says is that if you actually do this random walk starting from T1, in n square steps, in expectation, you will take n square steps to go from V1 to Vn. Right? And so what happens if the other question that we want to know is what happens, what is the what if the person takes k step, what is the probability that he has reached Vn? We will see this also, right? So is this clear? Right? This sort of random walk, this is what is known as a random walk. So you have a graph, you start from some node, and then you start traversing this graph in no particular order, right? At every node you have some coin that you toss, and then based on its result, you either go to one node or to another node. Right? And you're trying to analyze where do you reach, right? If you have two fixed nodes, what is the expected time to go from one node to the other, and so on. Right? And in this particular case, we have a very fixed graph, right? And what we have just analyzed is that if you do this random walk on this graph, where at every node you have probability half of going forward and probability half of going back, it will take you n square steps to go from V1 to Vn. Right? Is this clear? Any questions regarding this? Yeah, according to this formula, Tn is not 0. Oh yeah, because you will have this thing. Oh, okay. So maybe Tn should, yeah. So let me just see if this T1 would be, okay, maybe it is I squared. So maybe the notation, I don't know, maybe I'll put it as I squared. I don't know. It will be something order n squared. I don't know. I forgot if I haven't done the exact calculation, but let's say it's n squared minus I squared for now. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Pragya. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, it's order n squared. That's what is important. But yeah, good. So let's see any other questions. Yeah. Any other questions regarding this? So let's see how is this related to our the two-sat algorithm. Okay. So let's look at the two-sat algorithm. So what does how does that naive two-sat algorithm work? It says that let's start with a arbitrary assignment. Okay, so let's start with an arbitrary assignment which is all zeros. Okay, so now what is the two-sat algorithm trying to do? It's somehow trying to go towards the satisfying assignment. Okay, so assume in the worst case. Okay, so let's go back to two-sat. Okay, let's go back to the two-sat case. Let me just draw the graph here, and we will need it. Right. So in the two-set example, you start with an arbitrary assignment. Okay, so let me call it V0 for now, because that will make more sense as we go along. And Vn. Okay. Now, if you take an arbitrary assignment, so assume that your formula phi, okay, has exactly one satisfying assignment somehow. Right. In the worst case, this could be the case, and your randomized algorithm has to actually find this assignment. Right. That's the only way in which you will actually some problem with the pen, I guess. Just a minute, I'll just stop presenting once. Okay. So suppose that it has exactly one satisfying assignment. Okay. Now your algorithm must somehow find this single satisfying assignment after this randomized algorithm, right? And what you want to know is how likely are you to find the algorithm, find the satisfying assignment when you do this very naive process. Okay. So let's start. So where does it start? The algorithm starts by taking, say, a bar, which is this assignment, which is all zeros, right? Now, the good case is if this assignment is already a satisfying assignment, in which case you will always answer yes directly, right? Otherwise, what happens is that uh, there are some bits that are different between this assignment and your satisfying assignment. Right? So there is some satisfying assignment that you want to reach, find out or reach doing these changes, and there is so there's some difference between your assignment and the satisfying assignment. Okay, so let's say this has one satisfying assignment, call it S. Right? So there is some uh, distance between your A and S. Right? So now the way this corresponds to the graph is as follows, right? Starting with an arbitrary assignment is like starting with at some position of this graph, right? And this is where you want to reach to. This corresponds to the satisfying assignment. And this distance that you have here is the number of bits that are different from your current assignment to the satisfying assignment. Right? So think of it this way, right? So this each node in the graph corresponds to the weight of your assignment. Okay. So initially you might say the initial assignment, all zeros might be completely different from your satisfying assignment. All ones might be the correct assignment. Or it could be that, it is different in some, say, 10 positions. Okay. And now what you're going to see is that your algorithm, right, the two-set algorithm that we saw is actually performing a random walk on this graph. Okay. And the expected time for this algorithm to find a satisfying assignment, if one exists, therefore is going to be bounded by whatever we saw, right, with that n square bound. Okay. So this, we are going to see that this algorithm can be modeled as doing a random walk on this particular graph. Okay. Why do we say that this is doing a random walk on this graph? Let's look at the place where the randomization comes in, right? So you're going to take a clause and you're going to flip one of the bits. You know that the clause is not satisfied by the assignment, which means that one of these two bits must be different, right? So let's take a clause ci, okay, and say that ci contains two literals, L1 or L2, okay? And I know that ci, when given the assignment a bar, is 0, right? Which means that this is 0, which means that Li is 0 and L1 is 0 and L2 is also 0. Right? That's why the clause is not being satisfied. So one of these bits must be flipped. Right? So what are the cases that can have? So the following three, you can have the following cases, right? The first is that in the actual satisfying assignment, in S, both L1 and L2 is equal to 1, right? Or it is a possible that in S, exactly one of L1 or L2 is 1. Right? One of these two things must happen. Correct? Because you know that this assignment is this is not being satisfied. So at least one of them must be 1. Maybe both of them are 1 in the satisfying assignment. Right? So for instance, suppose that both L1 and L2 are 1, right? Then your random choice basically is telling you that no matter which random choice you make, you're definitely going towards the satisfying assignment, right? So if you're here, right? Say if you're here, and if you're in case 1, you're definitely going forward, right? What about in the second case? So what is the chance that you will go back? So it is possible that in S, exactly one of L1 or L2 is 1, right? So which means that suppose that L1 is equal to L1 is 0 in S and L2 is equal to 1 in S. Then the only way you can go forward is if your random choice actually chooses L2 to be flipped rather than L1. Right? If you choose L1 to be flipped, you will go back. If you choose L2 to be flipped, then you will go front. Right? By going front, what do you mean? You have an assignment. The current assignment you have differs from S in positions L1 and in L2, but not in L1. So if you choose L2 and flip it, then definitely you're going towards the satisfying assignment. Right? So what you can say is that these arrows are now not exactly half and half, but you know that the probability of going forward is at least half, right? Because you know that if you are not in a satisfying assignment, and if you take a clause that is not satisfied, then with probability at least half you will go forward, right? Why? Because the two cases can happen. One is that exactly one of L1 or L2 is equal to 1, right? The other one is actually 0, in which case with probability exactly half, you will choose the correct variable to flip. Or it is that both L1 and L2 has to be flipped, in which case it doesn't matter what random choice you make, you will always flip the correct bit, right? So the probability of going forward is always at least half. And similarly, the probability of going back is at most half, right? Because if you're in this situation here, right, if you're in this situation here, then no matter what random choice you make, you'll never go back. You'll always be going towards your satisfying assignment. It's only in this case here that you will make a mistake and you might actually go back. And the probability for that is just half, right? So at every step, the probability that you will go back is only at most half, and the probability that you will go front is going to be at least half, right? So think of your two-set algorithm now as doing this walk, right? So initially you start with the all zeros assignment. Look at the Hamming, the distance, the Hamming distance, the number of bits that are different from this assignment, right, to the satisfying assignment. You don't know what it is currently. But whatever is that difference, you're sitting in that corresponding vertex in this graph, right? So at every step of this algorithm, you're actually making a step towards Vn or away from Vn. You make a step towards Vn if you choose the correct literal to be flipped. And you know that the correct literal must exist in a clause that is not satisfied by the current assignment, right? So Ci is a clause that is not satisfied by the current assignment, which means that L1 or L2 has to be flipped. Now, either both has to be flipped or only one has to be flipped. In either case, with probability at least half, you will flip the correct bit, which means that you will go towards your satisfying assignment. Right? Similarly, if exactly one of them has to be flipped, then you might actually go back with probability half. But the probability of going back is at most half. So your two-set algorithm is doing a random walk on this graph, starting from some vertex in the graph. Right? The choice of the vertex depends on the starting assignment. In the worst case, you might be starting from V0. You might be completely different from Vn. But then at every step, you have probability at least half of going forward and a probability at most half of going back. Okay? So what it means is that if you do this random walk, in expectation, after n square steps, you will actually reach a satisfying assignment if one exists. Okay? So suppose you take a formula that is satisfiable and you run this naive algorithm on it, then in expectation n square steps, you will reach that satisfying assignment, at least one satisfying assignment. Right? If there are multiple satisfying assignments, you might reach a satisfying assignment much faster. But in the worst case, your formula might have just one satisfying assignment, in which case within n square steps, in expectation, you will reach the satisfying assignment. And the algorithm, the naive algorithm, can be thought of as doing this random walk on this graph. Okay. And what we'll do is we'll analyze this algorithm a little more carefully, and we will generalize this algorithm for 3-SAT, for instance, and try to understand the properties of this random walk better. And then we will see how these random walks are a special case of what are called Markov chains. Okay? And then we will extend the study of random graphs to arbitrary graphs, right? So you can do random walks on any graph. This is one particular graph. What if you do random walk on an arbitrary graph? What can you say about where the random walk will reach, which vertices will it visit, how often does it visit a certain vertex, and so on. We will try to answer these questions. And then we will try to develop this Markov chain idea of Markov chains more and look at how it is useful for a variety of algorithmic questions. Okay? So that is what we are going to do in the next module of this course. Okay, so we'll stop for now and we'll meet on Wednesday. Okay. Any questions so far?
So I have a doubt. Like at any point, if you flip some literal, there's a chance that many other CIs simultaneously become not satisfied. Right?
That is correct. That will happen. So that's correct. So if you try to analyze it that way, you will feel that you might actually be making a lot of mistakes, right? But if you look at this graph, what you know is that you're more likely to go towards a satisfying assignment when you flip a bit than you're going to go away from a satisfying assignment, right? So the way is to look at this algorithm differently, to view this algorithm as a random walk on the graph. Right? What you're saying is exactly correct. It is possible that you will flip this bit and you will end up not satisfying a lot of clauses. But what you can say is that this bit had to be flipped because this was the correct way. I mean, in the correct satisfying assignment, this bit was one, so you had to flip it anyway.
Okay.
right?
Like we are considering one particular satisfying assignment and analyzing with respect to that.
With respect to that. And that's a worst case analysis, right? It is possible that your formula has exactly one satisfying assignment. So in the worst case, this can happen. If there are more satisfying assignments, it is good because you might actually hit a satisfying assignment faster. Right? But at least for that fixed satisfying assignment, you will, reach that assignment within n square steps. That's what it says.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah. So what you're saying is correct. It is possible that the first clause that you choose to flip, you might end up. So for instance, it is possible that in the starting assignment, the first clause was not satisfied and all the other clauses were satisfied. Now you choose this clause and flip a bit. It is possible that you will satisfy this clause, but then you will not satisfy all the other clauses. That is also possible. Right? So you might think that you are not actually making progress. In fact, you will feel that you have made, it's going backwards, right? You have not satisfied a lot of clauses now. But then what this graph is telling you is that with probability at least half, you have actually made a progress, right? Even though you have not satisfied a lot of clauses, you're actually going in the correct direction. Yeah. So we are saying that no matter what particular clause we choose, with probability at least half, we are moving closer. Yeah, exactly. Right? The reason is that the clause that we choose is not satisfied, which means that you can be sure that one of those bits has to be flipped. That is the only reason it was not satisfied. In any satisfying assignment where those two bits are equal to whatever you have currently, that clause will not be satisfied. So you have to flip those bits no matter what. If you randomly choose one of the bit to be flipped, then with probability at least half, you have chosen the correct bit to be flipped. That is the idea. Yeah, does that make sense? Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, so then we'll study this in detail in the next class. My tab, I don't know, is not working that well. Also, I'll try to fix this issue, and we'll talk on Wednesday. Right? We'll analyze this better. Right? We'll analyze this. We'll extend this to say 3SAT and see what happens. Right? It should not give you a polynomial time algorithm. We'll see how it can be studied. Right? How do we generalize it? And we'll see how this is actually what is known as a Markov chain. Right? And then analyze Markov chains in more detail. Okay. So yeah, then that's all.